Hey nerds. Today we are going to talk about the DBQ, the heralded, scary, freaking out DBQ, right? But I don't want you to freak out because it's not as bad as it thinks. One of the reasons we've been going slowly through the writing process in Apush, starting with our short answers, moving on to the LEQs, is that the DBQ really builds on all of those. It's the hardest, but it only has a few different components than the other parts of the exam. So as you've already looked at three things, one, what to do when you write a DBQ in our DBQ breakdown. Two, the sample DBQ, which is an excellently written sample, and hopefully you were able to either read the original version or the typed up version that I sent out yesterday. And then third, looked at the DBQ itself and seen exactly what the College Board is looking for and the kind of questions you're going to get. One of the things I wanted to bring to your attention is that the DBQ and the LEQ are very, very similar. There are only really three main differences to the DBQ as opposed to the LEQ. And those differences are this. The first one is that you have to support your argument with the documents provided. And all that means is you are using those documents to help explain your reasoning. And all you have to do to cite them is by putting the little parentheses, doc A, doc B, doc C, just like it did in the sample. What you will notice from reading that sample is that at no point does the student quote the actual document. Quoting the document is not a good idea, so make sure you're not doing that, but you're going to use the document to support your argument. That's the first difference. The second difference, as really outlined on the rubric and then as you see in the sample, is that the College Board is asking you to remember, to contextualize, to find the audience, the point of view, and the purpose. Three of the documents, not all of them, three of them. So you'll notice in that student's essay that there are 4 body paragraphs, which is rather odd. But in that body paragraph, she throws in some textual or some evidence and some support from the documents. And at 3 occasions, and you could argue 4, she caps them. She talks about the point of view. She talks about the purpose of the document, what it was originally intended for when it was published. And she does that very, very well. So that's something you've been working on for a while now, doing these little exercises in preparation for the DBQ. And so you're just going to have to do that with 3 documents that you understand the best. Last but not least, sort of the third difference is that understanding the complexity of history by giving concessions, especially those in the documents. So as you'll notice, those documents in the sample DBQ, some of them support the argument of the student, others don't. And she doesn't just ignore them here. She talks about them and actually argues against them. So she gives concessions and arguments against these documents, which is great. That tells the College Board and the graders that you, the student, have a greater understanding of the history and are analyzing it from a very mature and academic perspective. So those are the 3 main differences between the DBQ and the LEQ. Now I'd like to switch gears a little bit. I'm going to flip over my note card so I remember to mention everything. I want to talk about the sample DBQ as a whole. And you did this little outline with the rubric, and hopefully you found these things as well. But first I have to point out that she contextualizes first. First and foremost, she sets the stage and talks about the Great Depression leading into the New Deal and all the rest, and she earns her points for contextualization right there. She doesn't just stop there, though. She contextualizes the rest of her essay. So she does it first, but she continues on throughout. But at least she gets it right at the beginning, which sets the stage for her thesis. Now, her thesis is in 3 parts, although I don't think it's in one complete sentence. I think she actually breaks it into 2. But she begins with an although statement. And one of the things you'll notice on that breakdown that is also included in the document is I'm going to suggest that you use this although method because it already builds a concession. Remember, an argument always has 2, 3, or multiple sides. So there's always another side to it. There's no sure thing argument. So by saying although, yada, 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 and then moving into your argument with your evidence, it demonstrates that you have a complex understanding of history. So I would suggest using the although method like she did. Now she says, although the New Deal didn't fix all the problems of the Great Depression, it still did these 3 things. It gave unemployment a boost, and gave jobs to people, opened up jobs for regular Americans. 2, the government used deficit spending to get these jobs done, as well as the other programs which she outlines in her analysis. And 3, that the government was forever changed by the New Deal. These are her 3 topic sentences as she continues on in her analysis. Now, one of the things you'll also notice is when she gets down to her body paragraph, she uses 2 pieces of outside evidence and at least 1 evidence from the document in every paragraph. That should be your goal as well, and that's why the layout of the breakdown is done the way that it is because it's trying to get you to think in the sort of the mindset of I got to think of at least 2, better off 3 pieces of outside evidence, information I know about this subject to include in my analysis and in my explanation, as well as evidence from the documents themselves. So she does at least 2 in each body paragraph. She also uses the documents to great effect. One of the interesting parts is she doesn't use a document at all in her first intro paragraph when she talks about deficit spending a little bit. So that's kind of interesting, but she uses the rest of the documents throughout the rest of her explanation. One of the things that she doesn't do, which surprises me but still works, is she doesn't have a 3 body paragraph essay. Instead, she has a 4 body paragraph essay. And while structure is not the most important thing, it does get a little confused at some point. I think her first paragraph and her 4th paragraph, body paragraphs, could be combined into 1. But that's sort of a minor point. What she does do very effectively is she incorporates that complex, watch my air quotes, complex understanding of history throughout the entire document, her entire essay. And she does this by arguing against the documents themselves. Some she uses as support. Some she uses to show that people during the New Deal, during this period of time, were arguing against New Deal policies, and why she feels that some of their arguments are valid and some of their arguments are not valid, and then supports that with analysis and evidence. That's exactly the kind of thing that you should be doing in your DBQs. You'll notice that her conclusion, that last paragraph, is rather meaningless. There's really no point to it. She obviously is a quick writer because she had time to write it, and so she does at the end. But by no means do you need to do that. What you do need to do is to show that complex understanding. And this is where we've struggled a little bit in the LEQs for the most part, and is that last part of the rubric where you can get 1 or 2 points. It's very similar to the LEQ, but here you have an opportunity to argue against the documents, not just against something that you come up with, which is harder. Here you get to speak out against the documents. So one of my suggestions would be, if you're reading along and you come up with your argument, what your argument is going to be in your DBQ, and you see a document that you just can't figure out, why does this support my argument? Use that as something to argue against. That could be a really good way to earn that 2nd point under the analysis and reasoning section of the rubric. All right, I know that was a lot. Maybe after watching this video, you should go back and take a look at the rubric again and what you worked on. Here's what I need you to do looking forward towards spring break. I need you to complete a new DBQ that I'm going to post and do one of your own. Now, it's not going to be fully written. It's just going to be an outline, just going to be that breakdown, which is the 2nd part of that breakdown, short DBQ breakdown document that I posted to Schoology. Again, this is all going to be on the honor system. This is going to prepare you for the exam. By the end of next week, we will know exactly what's going to be expected of us to do for the AP exam come May. It's going to be different, but my guess is it's going to contain some sort of document-based questions, so we need to practice. So I will post more specific instructions on Schoology, but for right now, go back, look at this sample DBQ, and see how you can write one of your own of equal caliber. I know that you guys are up to the task. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy, stay smart, and I will see you soon. Hey, Thomas, I have 2 belt sanders. What if they race?